Good evening. Um, this evening, I'm going to um, read the 19th section of the Red Book by C.G. Jung, entitled One of the Lowly, One of the Lowly. And this act of imagination of Dr. Jung's was dated December 29th, 1913. So very early in his writing career. A handwritten draft has third adventure, and the corrected draft has the rogue, which is then covered over with paper on page 186 of the uh, heart of the Black Books. Good evening, Art. Welcome. Uh, so this is an 8-page segment. I'm going to try to quickly squeeze it in um, before I'm called to dinner tonight. I don't like to be called late for dinner either. So, anyway, one of the lowly. In the following night, I found myself wandering once more in a homely, snow covered country. A gray evening sky covers the sun. The air is moist and frosty. Someone who does not look trustworthy has just joined me. Most notably, he has only one eye and a few scars on his face. He is poor and dirtily clothed, a tramp. He has a black stubble beard that has not seen a razor for a long time. I have a good walking stick for any eventuality. It's damned cold, he remarks after a while. I agree. After a longer pause, he asks, Where are you going? I. I am going to the next village where I plan to stay overnight. He. I'd like to do that too, but will hardly manage to get a bed. I. Have you no money? Well, let us see. Are you out of work? He. Yes, times are bad. Until a few days ago, I was working for a locksmith, but then he had no more work. Now I'm traveling and looking for work. I. Wouldn't you work for a farmer? There is always a shortage of farm labor. He. Working for a farmer doesn't suit me. That means getting up early in the morning. The work is hard and the wages low. I. But it's always much more beautiful in the country than in the town. He. It's boring in the country. One meets nobody. I. Well, but there are also villagers. He. But there is no mental stimulation. The farmers are clods. I. Or no, this is still he. I look at him astonished. What? What he still want? What he still wants mental stimulation? Better than he. Better that he honestly earn his keep, and when he has done that, he can think of stimulation. I. But tell me, what kind of mental stimulation is there in the city? He. You can go to the cinema in the evenings. That's great and it's cheap. You get to see everything that happens in the world. I have to think of hell, where there are also cinemas for those who despise this institution on earth and did not go there because everyone else found it to their taste. I. What interested you most about the cinema? He. One sees all sorts of stunning feats. One sees all sorts of stunning feats. There was one man who ran up houses, another carried his head under his arm, another even stood in the middle of a fire and wasn't burned. Yes, it's really remarkable the things that people can do. And that's what this fellow calls mental stimulation. But wait, that does not seem remarkable. Didn't the saints also carry their heads under their arms? Didn't St. Francis and St. Ignatius levitate? And what about the three men in the fiery furnace? Isn't it isn't it a blasphemous idea to consider the Acta Sanctorum as historical cinema? Oh, today's miracles are simply somewhat less mythical than technical. I regard my companion with feeling. He lives the history of the world. And I. Certainly, it's very well done. Did you see anything else like this? He. Yes, I saw how the King of Spain was murdered. I. But he wasn't murdered at all. He. Well, that doesn't matter. In that case, it was one of those damn capitalist kings. At least they got one of them. If all of them were taken out, the people would be free. Not a word more dare I say. Wilhelm Tell, a work by Friedrich Schiller, the man is standing right in the thick of it, in the stream of heroic story, one who announces the murder of the tyrant to a sleeping people. We have arrived at the inn, a country tavern, a reasonably clean parlor. A few men sit with beer in the corner. I am recognized as a gentleman and led into a better corner where a checkered cloth covers the end of the table. The other sits down at the far end of the table, and I decide to have him served a proper evening meal. He is already looking at me full of expectation and hunger with his one eye. I. Where did you lose your eye? He. In a brawl, but I also got my knife into the other fellow pretty nicely. After that, he got 3 months. After that, he got 3 months. They gave me 6, but it was beautiful in prison. At the time, the building was completely new. I worked in the locksmiths. There wasn't much to do, and yet there was enough to eat. Prison really isn't all that bad. I look around to make sure that no one is listening to me talking with a former convict, but no one seems to have noticed. I seem to have ended up in well-to-do company. Are there also prisons in hell for those who never saw the inside of one while they were alive? Incidentally, wasn't it mustn't it be a peculiarly beautiful feeling to hit bottom in reality at least once, where there is no going down and further, but only upward and beckons at best, where for once one stands before the whole height of reality? He. So after that, there I was, out on the street, since they banished me. Then I went to France. It was lovely there. What demands beauty makes. Something can be learned from this man. I. Why did you have this brawl? He. It was over a woman. She was carrying his bastard, but I wanted to marry her. She was already due. After that, she didn't want to. After that, she didn't want to anymore. I haven't heard from her. I. How old are you now? He. I'll be 35 in spring. Once I find a proper job, we can get married right off. I'll find myself one. I will. There's something wrong with my lungs, though, but that'll soon get better again. He, he has a coughing fit. I think that the prospects are not good and silently admire the poor devil's unswerving optimism. And silently admire the poor devil's unswerving optimism. After dinner, I go to bed in a humble room. I hear how the other settles into his lodging for the night next door. He coughs several times. Then he falls still. Suddenly I awaken again at an uncanny moan and gurgle mixed with a half-stifled cough. I listen tensely. No doubt it's him. It sounds like something dangerous. I jump up and throw something on. I open the door of his room. Moonlight floods in. The man lies still dressed on a sack of straw. A dark stream of blood is flowing from his mouth and forming a puddle on the floor. He moans half chokingly and coughs out blood. He wants to get up, but sinks back again. I hurry to support him, but I see that the hand of death lies on him. He is sullied with blood twice over. My hands are covered with it. A rattling sigh escapes from me. Then every stiffness loosens. A gentle shudder passes over his limbs, and then everything is deathly still. Where am I? Are there also cases of death in hell for those who have never thought about death? I look at my blood-stained hands as if I were a murderer. Is it not the blood of my brother that sticks to my hands? The moon paints my shadow black on the white walls of the chamber. What am I doing here? Why this horrible drama? I look inquiringly at the moon as a witness. How does this concern the moon? Has it not already seen worse? Has it not shown 100,000 times into broken eyes? This is certainly of no avail to its eternal craters, no more or less. Death? Does it not uncover the terrible deceit of life? Therefore, it is probably all the same to the moon, whether and how one passes away. Only we kick up a fuss about it. With what right? What did this one do? He worked, lazed about, laughed, drank, ate, slept, gave his eye for the woman, and for her sake forfeited his good name. Furthermore, he lived the human myth after a fashion. He admired the wonder workers, praised the death of the tyrant, and vaguely dreamed of the freedom of the people. And then he miserably died, like everyone else. That is generally valid. I sat down on the floor. What shadows over the earth? All lights gutter out in final despondency and loneliness. Death has entered, and there is no one left to grieve. This is a final truth and no riddle. What delusion could make us believe in riddles? Thank you, David. Reading on, I'm reading a few more pages. This is the 19th reading of the Red Book. And I'm reading from the Reader's Edition of the Red Book by C.G. Jung. I'm on page 236. We stand on the spiky stones of misery and death. A destitute joins me and wants admittance into my soul, and I am thus not destitute enough. Where is my destitution when I did not live it? Where is my destitution when I did not live it? I was a player at life, one who thought earnestly about life and lived it easily. The destitute was far away and forgotten. Life had become difficult and murkier. Winter kept on going, and the destitute stood in snow and froze. I joined myself with him, since I need him. He makes living light and easy. He leads to the depths, to the ground where I can see the heights. Without the depths, I do not have the heights. I may be on the heights, but precisely because of that, I do not become aware of the heights. I therefore need the bottommost for my renewal. If I am always on the heights, I wear them out, and the best becomes atrocious to me. But because I do not want to have it, my best becomes a horror to me. Because of that, I myself become a horror to myself and to others, and a bad spirit of torment. Be respectful and know that your best has become a horror. With that, you save yourself and others from useless torment. A man who can no longer climb down from his heights is sick, and he brings himself and others to torment. If you have reached your depths, then you see your height light up brightly over you, worthy of desire and far off, as if unreachable. since secretly you would prefer not to reach it, since it seems unattainable to you. For you also love to praise your heights when you are low, and to tell yourself that you would have only left them with pain, and that you did not live so long as you missed them. It is a good thing that you have almost become the other nature that makes you speak this way. But a bottom you know, that is not quite true. At your low point, you are no longer distinct from your fellow beings. You are not ashamed and do not regret it, since insofar as you live the life of your fellow beings and descend into their lowliness, you also climb into the holy stream of common life, where you are no longer an individual on a high mountain, but a fish among fish, a frog among frogs. Your hearts are your own mountain. I'm sorry, I misread that. Going back. Your hearts are your own mountain, which belongs to you and to you alone. There you are individual and live your very own life. If you live your own life, you do not live the common life, which is always continuing and never ending, the life of history and the inalienable and ever-present burdens and products of the human race. There you live the endlessness of being, but not the becoming. Becoming belongs to the heights and is full of torment. How can you become if you never are? Therefore you need your bottommost, since there you are, but therefore you also need your heights, since there you become. If you live the common life at your lowest reaches, then you become aware of yourself. If you are on your heights, then you are your best, and you become aware only of your best, but not that which you are in the general life as a being. What one is as one who becomes, no one knows. But on the heights, imagination is at its strongest, for we imagine that we know what we are as developing beings, and even more so, the less we want to know what we are as beings. Because of that, we do not love the condition of our being brought low, although, or rather precisely because only there do we attain clear knowledge of ourselves. Everything is riddlesome to one who is becoming, but not to one who is. He who suffers from riddles should take thought of his lowest condition. We solve those riddles from which we suffer, but not those which please us. To be that which you are is the bath of rebirth. In the depths, being is not an unconditional persistence, but an endlessly slow growth. You think you are standing still like swamp water, but slowly your flow into the sea that covers the earth's greatest deeps and is so vast that firm land seems only an island embedded in the womb of the immeasurable sea. As a drop in the ocean, you take part in the current, ebb and flow. You swell slowly on the land and slowly sink back again in interminably slow breaths. You wander vast distances in blurred currents and wash up on strange shores, not knowing how you got there. You mount the billows of huge storms and are swept back again into the depths. And you do not know how this happens to you. You had thought that your movement came from you and that it needed your decisions and efforts so that you could get going and make progress. but with every conceivable effort, you would never have achieved this movement and reached those areas to which the sea and the great wind of the world brought you. From endless blue plains, you sink into black depths. Luminous fish draw you. Marvelous branches twine around you from above. You slip through columns and twisting, wavering, dark-leaved plants, and the sea takes you up again in bright green water to white, sandy coasts, and a wave foams you ashore and swallows you back again, and a wide, smooth swell lifts you softly and leads you again to new regions, to twisting plants, to slowly creeping, slimy polyps, and to green water and white sand and breaking surf. But from far off, your heights shine to you above the sea in a golden light, like the moon emerging from the tide, and you become aware of yourself from afar, and longing seizes you and the will for your own movements. You want to cross over from being to becoming, since you have recognized the breath of the sea and its flowing that leads you here and there without you ever adhering. You have also recognized its surge that bears you to alien shores and carries you back and gargles you up and down. You saw that it was the life of the whole and the death of each individual. You felt yourself entwined in the collective death, from death to the earth's deepest place, from death in your own strangely breathing depths. Oh, you long to be beyond. Despair and mortal fear seize you in this death that breathes slowly and streams back and forth eternally. All this light and dark, warm and tepid, cold water, all these wavy, swaying, twisting, plant-like animals and bestial plants, all these nightly wonders become a horror to you, and you long for the sun, for light, dry air, for firm stones, for a fixed place and straight lines, for the motionless and firmly held, for rules and preconceived purpose, for singleness and your own intent. The knowledge of death came to me that night. From the dying that engulfs the world, I saw how we live toward death, how the swaying golden wheat sinks together under the scythe of the reaper, like a smooth wave in the sea beach. He who abides in common life becomes aware of death with fear. Thus, the fear of death drives him toward singleness. He does not live there, but he becomes aware of life and is happy since in singleness he is one who becomes and has overcome death. He overcomes death through overcoming common life. He does not live his individual being, since he is not what he is, but what he becomes. One who becomes grows aware of life, whereas one who simply exists never will, since he is in the midst of life. He needs the heights and singleness to become aware of life, but in life he becomes aware of death. And it is good that you become aware of collective death, since then you know why your singleness and your heights are good. Your heights are like the moon that luminously wanders alone, and through the night looks eternally clear. Sometimes it covers itself, and then you are totally in the darkness of earth. But time and again it fills itself out with light. The death of the earth is foreign to it. Motionless and clear, it sees the life of the earth from afar, with our enveloping haze and streaming oceans. Its unchanging form has been solid from eternity. It is the solitary clear light of the night, the individual being and the near fragments of eternity. From there you look out, cold, motionless, and radiating. With otherworldly silvery light and green twilights, you pour out into the distant horror. You see it, but your gaze is clear and cold. Your hands are red from living blood, but the moonlight of your gaze is motionless. It is the lifeblood of your brother. Yes, it is your own blood. But your gaze remains luminous and embraces the entire horror and the earth's round. Your gaze rests on silvery seas, on snowy peaks, on blue valleys, and you did not hear the groaning and howling of the human animal. The moon is dead. Your soul went to the moon, to the preserver of souls. Thus the soul moved toward death. I went into the inner depth. I went into the inner death and saw outer dying is better than inner death. And I decided to die outside and to live within. For that reason, I turned away and sought the place of the inner life. Okay, so that's that segment. And there were a few footnotes. I did read you the date, which was December 29th, 1913. And then let me see if I can find a few more of these footnotes. The emblem of the city of Zurich bears this motif, showing the late 3rd century martyr Felix, Regula, and Exuperantius. Okay, this was one of the... Okay, there was a question here. And that's what this fellow calls mental stimulation. But wait, that does seem remarkable. Didn't the saints also carry their heads under their arms? And so then there's the footnote. The emblem of the city of Zurich bears this motif, showing the late 3rd century martyrs, Felix, Regula, and Exuperantius. And the reference to the men in the furnace, this appears to be a reference to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Daniel 3, whom Nebuchadnezzar ordered to be placed into a furnace for refusing to worship the golden idol that he had erected. They were unscathed by the fire, which led Nebuchadnezzar to decree that he would cut up anyone who henceforth spoke against their God. In William Tell, 1805, Friedrich Schiller dramatized the revolt of the Swiss cantons against the rule of the Austrian Habsburg Empire at the beginning of the 14th century, which led to the founding of the Swiss Confederation. In Act 4, Scene 3, Wilhelm Tell kills Gessler, the imperial representative. Stussy, the ranger, announces, "The tyrant of the land is dead. From now henceforth we suffer no oppression. We are free men." Let's see if there's any more important footnotes. Okay. In Transformation and Symbols of the Libido, which is Symbols of Transformation, Volume 6, Jung cited beliefs in different cultures that the moon was the gathering place of departed souls. I'm sorry, this is Collected Works B, paragraph 496. In Mysterium Conjunctionis, Jung commented on this motif in Alchemy, Collected Works 14, paragraph 155. The draft continues, I accepted the rogue and lived and died with him. Since I lived him, I became his murderer, since we kill what we live. And then there's the sentence, for that reason I turned away and sought the place of the inner life. And the corrected draft continues, from death. Okay, that's the footnote. Okay, so tomorrow, hopefully, I will go on with this and read The Anchorite. And that's one of my favorite passages because, among other things, it includes this statement. One must know one thing above all. A succession of words does not have only one meaning, but men strive to assign only a single meaning to a sequence of words in order to have an unambiguous language. This striving is worldly and constricted and belongs to the deepest layers of the divine creative plan. On the higher levels of insight into divine thoughts, you recognize that the sequence of words has more than one valid meaning. Only to the all-knowing is it given to know all the meanings of a sequence of words. Increasingly, we try to grasp a few more meanings. Okay, so that's where I'm going to stop for tonight. And let's see. And thank you, David. Vixen Dixon says, this is more like a bedtime story for me since it is coming up at midnight here. I wonder what kind of dreams I will have tonight. That's a good question. I look forward to you telling us if you have any. I've been having a few dreams based on these readings, I must say. And today I saw the movie Bombshell with Nicole Kidman and Charlize Theron and one other younger woman. It's a very powerful movie. I urge you to see it. And the other movie I urge you to see, which is on Netflix, is The Two Popes. That also is a very powerful movie. So anyway, those are my recommendations for tonight. Thank you for joining me today.